The human response began with silence. Across the galaxy, every human settlement stopped what they were doing and looked to the stars. Through the quantum network that connected all their minds, they felt the pain of Haven's rest and the awakening of their true nature. Admiral Ryu Jae-sung stood on the bridge of his flagship as the transformation completed itself. The ship was no longer made of simple metal and circuits. It had become something alive, something that responded to the crew's thoughts and emotions like a trusted friend. "Admiral, the fleet is ready," reported Captain Jo Sung-min from the new battleship Retribution. His vessel looked nothing like the human ships of old. Its hull flowed with patterns of light, and it moved through space like liquid starlight. "How many ships do we have?" Ryu asked. 200 vessels, sir. But these aren't the same ships we had yesterday. They've been improved, enhanced by the quantum field. They can do things that our old technology never could." Ryu looked out at his fleet through the viewing screen. Each ship was unique now, shaped by the personality and needs of its crew. Some looked like great birds ready to soar through space. Others resembled flowing water frozen in time. All of them pulsed with energy that made reality bend around them. "Set course for Haven's Rest," he ordered. "Maximum speed." "Sir, what is maximum speed for us now?" The navigation officer, her eyes glowing with quantum light, smiled. "We'll be there in 30 minutes, Admiral. The ships can fold space now." 30 minutes later, the human fleet emerged from folded space around Haven's Rest. They appeared not in flashes of light like normal hyperspace jumps, but like flowers blooming in the darkness, beautiful and impossible. Warlord Vex Thul stared at the human fleet on his viewing screen. His 40 Dominion warships suddenly seemed small and primitive compared to the graceful vessels surrounding them. But more disturbing was what he could feel through the quantum connection. Love. The humans felt love for him and his soldiers, even after everything the Dominion had done. Not hatred or revenge, but genuine care for their well-being. It was so alien to his nature that it made him physically sick. "Warlord," said his communications officer, "the humans are broadcasting a message." Captain Lee Hyun-woo's face appeared on the screen. Behind him, the colony of Haven's Rest was rebuilding itself with quantum energy, the damaged buildings flowing back into perfect form. "Warlord Vex Thul," Lee said, his voice calm and kind. "You came to our world with war and destruction. You threatened our families and hurt our people. But we don't hate you for this." "Then you are fools," Vex Thul snarled, though his words carried less conviction than before. "No, we understand now what we are and what you are. You were taught that strength comes from causing pain to others. You believe that to be powerful, you must make others weak. But this is wrong." Lee gestured to his people working alongside former Dominion soldiers to help the wounded. "True strength comes from lifting others up. Real power comes from healing what is broken. We will show you." Before Vex Thul could respond, something impossible began happening to his fleet. The quantum energy from the human ships was reaching out to touch the Dominion vessels. But instead of attacking them, it was changing them. "Sir, our weapon systems are shutting down," reported his weapons officer. "No, not shutting down. They're becoming something else." Vex Thul watched in amazement as his ship's plasma cannons transformed into devices that could grow food from empty space. The missile launchers became machines that could turn asteroids into beautiful gardens. Even the armor plating was changing, becoming lighter and stronger while generating energy instead of consuming it. "What are you doing to my ships?" he demanded. So Min Park's voice answered him. She was no longer entirely human, her form glowing with quantum energy that made her look like a living star. "We are showing you what your ships were always meant to be. Tools of creation, not destruction. I don't understand." "You will." The transformation spread to the Dominion soldiers themselves. One by one, they began to feel emotions they had never experienced before. A soldier who had spent his life hurting others suddenly felt overwhelming love for a human child he was, helping to safety. A ship captain who had destroyed entire worlds found himself weeping as he understood the beauty of life he had been destroying. Commander Kim Da-eun appeared on Vexthol's bridge, though her ship had been destroyed hours earlier. She was glowing with the same quantum energy as So-Min Park, her consciousness no longer bound by the limits of physical matter. "How are you alive?" Vexthol asked. "Death is just another barrier that we've learned to cross," Kim replied. "The quantum field connects all consciousness. When my body died, my mind simply moved to a new form of existence." She walked toward the warlord, and with each step, he felt his understanding of reality changing. Through the quantum connection, he experienced her memories. He felt what it was like to sacrifice yourself for others. He understood the deep joy that came from protecting innocent people. "This is what humans really are," Kim said gently. "We are gardeners of consciousness. We help other species grow beyond their limitations. We guide them toward love instead of hate, creation instead of destruction." Vexthul fell to his knees as the full weight of human emotion filled his mind. For the first time in his life, he felt genuine remorse for his actions. He could see the faces of every innocent person his forces had killed. He could feel the pain of every family they had destroyed. "I'm sorry," he whispered, tears streaming down his blue face. "I didn't know. I didn't understand." "Now you do," Kim said, helping him to his feet. "And now you can choose to be better." Across the galaxy, the same transformation was happening everywhere humans encountered other species. On worlds where the Dominion had established slave colonies, human ships appeared like angels of mercy. But instead of attacking the alien overseers, they simply touched their minds with understanding. Dr. Park Ji-ho, his consciousness now spread across the quantum network, spoke to every intelligent being in the galaxy simultaneously. His voice carried the wisdom of eons and the gentleness of a parent speaking to a frightened child. "People of the galaxy, the age of war is ending. You have all been children, fighting over toys in a sandbox while the universe waited for you to grow up. Now your older siblings have awakened to guide you." On Earth, the transformation of human technology continued at an incredible pace. Ships that had taken years to build were growing themselves in days. Weapons of war became tools of creation. Cities redesigned themselves to be more beautiful and efficient. Pilot Yoon Tai-jin, now flying a ship that existed partially in other dimensions, visited the homeworlds of species that had been enemies of humanity. But instead of conquest, he brought gifts, seeds that could grow in any soil, technology that could heal any wound, knowledge that could solve any problem. "Why are you helping us?" asked the leader of a world that had declared war on humanity just days before. "Because that's what love does," Yoon replied. "It helps others become the best version of themselves." The Altarian Republic, the Ethereal Collective, and dozens of other galactic powers watched in amazement as their most aggressive members laid down their weapons and began working together. The quantum field was spreading understanding and empathy wherever it touched. Medic Choi Min-ho established healing centers on 1,000 worlds, training former enemies to use the quantum energy to cure diseases and repair injuries that had been considered impossible to treat. His patients included beings that had been trying to kill humans just hours before. Engineer Park So-min, now existing as pure consciousness, began reshaping damaged worlds. Planets that had been stripped of resources found their ecosystems restored overnight. Dead worlds bloomed with new life as she guided the quantum field to repair what had been broken. The Dominion Empire became something entirely different. Warlord Vexthul, transformed by his experience with human consciousness, began dismantling the systems of oppression his people had built. Slave worlds were freed. Conquered species were given back their independence. Weapons of mass destruction were turned into tools for building instead of destroying. "What do we call ourselves now?" asked one of his former officers. "We are no longer the Dominion." "We are students," Vexthul replied. "The humans are teaching us how to be better, how to create instead of destroy, how to love instead of hate." Captain Lee Hyun-woo stood in the gardens that now covered Haven's Rest. The colony was more beautiful than it had ever been, its buildings grown from quantum energy into forms that seemed to sing with joy. Children of a dozen species played together under the alien sun, watched over by beings who had once been enemies. "Was this what we were always meant to become?" asked Dr. Park Ji-ho, his physical form restored by his daughter's power. "This is what the galaxy was always meant to become," Lee replied. "We were just the gardeners waiting to tend it." Admiral Ryu received reports from across human space. Every world was reporting the same thing. Former enemies were becoming friends. Weapons were becoming tools. Hatred was becoming understanding. "Admiral, we're receiving a message from the Galactic Council," reported his communications officer. "All major powers are requesting guidance," Ryu smiled. "Tell them we'll be happy to help. But first, make sure they understand one thing." "What's that, sir?" The silence in the Galactic Council chambers was deafening. 3 days had passed since Ambassador Ji-won had done the unthinkable. He had stood up from his seat, looked directly at the assembled representatives of 47 different species, and said words that still echoed in everyone's minds. "We're done here." The sound of his datapad hitting the crystalline table had been like a gunshot in the vast chamber. Then he had walked out, followed by every single human in the room. 12 diplomats, 6 military advisors, 4 trade specialists, and 2 cultural liaisons had simply left. The massive doors of the council chamber had closed behind them with a soft hiss, and that was it. Minho paced nervously behind his meditation platform. As chief mediator of the Galactic Council, he had seen many heated debates over his 200 years of service. Species had threatened each other, trade wars had been declared, and military posturing was common. But never had an entire delegation just walked away from negotiations. The Zenthari had always prided themselves on their ability to calm heated situations. Their tall, ethereal forms and soft, melodic voices were naturally soothing to most species. But right now, Minho felt anything but calm. The council chamber buzzed with worried conversations in dozens of languages. "This is exactly what we wanted," declared Corvin Admiral Vextar from his hovering command throne. His massive form cast a shadow over the smaller delegates nearby. "The humans were always too aggressive, too unpredictable. Now we can proceed with proper civilized discussions." Several other representatives nodded in agreement. The Corvin Empire had been the most vocal opponents of human inclusion in the council. They considered humans to be primitive warmongers who had stumbled into space travel through luck rather than wisdom. But not everyone shared this view. Delegate Yuna of the Delian Federation raised her graceful blue hand. Her species had been humanity's closest allies since first contact 20 years ago. With respect, Admiral Vextar, the humans provided 60% of our military defense. They coordinate the protection of 37 systems along the Outer Rim. Without them, we are vulnerable to pirate attacks and border raids. Nonsense, Vextar rumbled. Our technology is far superior to anything the humans possess. We simply allowed them to handle minor security issues as a courtesy. Minho watched the debate with growing unease. Something felt wrong about the whole situation. Ambassador Ji-won had not seemed angry when he left. There had been no shouting, no threats, no dramatic speeches. He had simply stated that humanity was finished with the talks and departed. The final words from Hyesung, the human trade liaison, bothered Minho the most. She had paused at the door, turned back to face the chamber, and said quietly, You will understand soon enough what you have lost." Then she had smiled sadly and walked away. "What are the immediate concerns?" Minho asked, trying to focus on practical matters. Delegate Theron of the Mining Guild stepped forward. His rocky, crystalline form glittered under the chamber's lights. "The humans manage logistics for the major trade routes. They coordinate shipping schedules, maintain navigation databases, and oversee cargo security. Without them, we may experience some delays. Delays we can handle," Admiral Vextar dismissed. "What else?" "Infrastructure maintenance," replied Counselor Kira of the Agricultural Worlds. "Human engineers maintain the atmospheric processors on 17 terraformed planets. They also manage water distribution systems and climate control networks." "We built those systems before the humans arrived," Vextar pointed out. "We can certainly maintain them ourselves." Minho noticed that several delegates looked uncertain about this claim, but no one spoke up to contradict the powerful Corvan admiral. The discussion continued for hours. Lists were made of human responsibilities and agreements. Plans were drafted for reassigning duties to other species. Everything seemed manageable on the surface. But as the day wore on, reports began filtering in from across the galaxy. Human personnel were quietly packing up and leaving their posts. No dramatic scenes, no angry confrontations. They simply completed their current tasks, handed over basic operational manuals, and departed. Tae-hyun, the chief human engineer overseeing the massive terraforming project on Kepler 442b, had finished his shift as normal. He had filed his daily reports, checked the atmospheric processor readings, and then calmly announced he was returning to human space. The local Corvan supervisors had thanked him for his service and wished him well. It was only after he left that they realized the atmospheric processors were incredibly complex machines. The manuals he had left behind contained basic operational procedures, but nothing about troubleshooting or repairs. When one of the processors started showing anomalous readings 12 hours later, the Corvan engineers discovered they had no idea how to fix it. Similar reports came in from mining operations, defense installations, and trade hubs throughout the galaxy. Humans were leaving, and the sophisticated systems they had built or maintained were beginning to show problems. "Perhaps we should try to contact Ambassador Ji-won," suggested Delegate Yuna. "We could negotiate new terms, address their concerns." Minho had already tried. All communication channels to human space were being politely declined. Not blocked or jammed, just declined. Human communication officers would accept the calls, listen to the requests, and then explain that their leadership was not available for discussions at this time. "They cannot simply ignore the Galactic Council," Admiral Vextar declared. "We have treaties, agreements, legal obligations." "Actually," said legal advisor Zen in his precise, clipped tone, "humanity's withdrawal appears to be entirely legal. They gave proper notice according to council regulations. All their treaty obligations include standard withdrawal clauses that they are following to the letter." This statement sent a ripple of unease through the chamber. The humans had not acted in anger or haste. This withdrawal had been planned, probably for some time. As the emergency session finally ended near the end of the Galactic Standard Day, Minho remained at his meditation platform. The chamber slowly emptied as delegates returned to their quarters, or departed for their home systems. The chief mediator stared at the empty seat where Ambassador Ji-won had spent the last 3 years patiently participating in endless debates and negotiations. The human had rarely spoken during sessions, but when he did, his words carried weight. He had a talent for finding compromise solutions that satisfied multiple parties. Now that seat was empty, and somehow the entire chamber felt smaller because of it. Minho had the uncomfortable feeling that the Galactic Council had just made a terrible mistake. The humans had not stormed out in defeat. They had walked away with quiet confidence, like people who knew something the rest of the galaxy did not. In 3 days, Minho suspected, they were all going to find out what that something was. 2 weeks had passed since humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Council, and the first real problems were starting to show. What had seemed like minor inconveniences were becoming serious issues across the galaxy. On the terraforming world of Kepler 442b, Corvan Supervisor Thekmar stood in the main control center, staring at displays he no longer understood. The atmospheric processors had been running smoothly for 3 years under human supervision. Now, red warning lights flashed on half the control panels. "Status report," he demanded from his engineering team. "Sir, we have managed to keep basic operations running," replied his chief technician. "But the quantum balance regulators are showing fluctuations we cannot explain. The human manuals describe how to read the displays, but not how to fix problems." Thekmar growled in frustration. Before the humans arrived, his people had built these processors. Surely they could maintain them. But the truth was becoming clear. The humans had not simply operated the machines. They had improved them, modified them, and integrated them in ways that went far beyond the original Corvan designs. The atmospheric processors on Kepler 442b were supposed to take 50 years to make the planet breathable. Under human management, they had been on track to finish in 30 years. Now, with the warning lights flashing and efficiency dropping, it looked like the project might take even longer than originally planned. Halfway across the galaxy, on the mining world of Zirion 7, an even more serious situation was developing. Nari had been the human supervisor for the quantum extractors that pulled rare metals from the planet's core. The work had seemed simple enough. She would arrive each morning, check various readings, make small adjustments, and file reports. The poor Corvan mining overseers had assumed she was just following basic procedures. They had watched her work for 2 years and thought they understood what she was doing. But when they tried to operate the extractors themselves, nothing worked properly. The quantum extractors were incredibly sophisticated machines that required constant fine-tuning. Nari had not been following simple procedures. She had been making hundreds of tiny adjustments based on patterns and calculations that she kept in her head. The mining output had increased by 40% under her supervision, and the Corvans had credited their superior technology. Now, with Nari gone, the output was falling rapidly. The extractors still functioned, but they were working at barely 60% of their previous efficiency. Worse, some of the delicate quantum resonance chambers were starting to show stress fractures. "Can we contact the human supervisor?" asked Mine Director Vorkath. "We tried," his assistant replied. "The humans are not taking calls from non-human space. All requests for technical assistance are being declined." Similar problems were emerging throughout the galaxy. On the research station orbiting Proxima Centauri b, the advanced laboratories that had been jointly operated by humans and Delians were shutting down one by one. The Delian scientists had the theoretical knowledge, but the humans had provided all the practical skills needed to keep the complex equipment functioning. Dr. Yuna of the Delian Federation found herself staring at a quantum analysis device that had cost more than a small starship. 3 days ago, it had been producing groundbreaking research results. Now it displayed nothing but error messages. "The problem is in the quantum field alignment," she explained to her research team. "But the human technicians never taught us how to calibrate the field generators. They always handled that part themselves." The research station had been one of the galaxy's most productive scientific facilities. Human-Delian cooperation had led to breakthroughs in medicine, engineering, and physics. Now millions of credits worth of equipment sat useless because no one knew how to maintain it properly, but the most serious problems were becoming apparent in the Outer Rim systems. Commander Dongwu of the Joint Defense Fleet had been quietly reassigning human ships and personnel back to human space. The Corvan admirals had been pleased to see the humans go. They had always complained that human tactics were too unpredictable and aggressive. Admiral Vextar had personally overseen the transfer of defensive responsibilities to Corvan forces. His ships were larger, his weapons more powerful, and his crews better trained according to proper military doctrine. What could possibly go wrong? The answer came in the form of the Crimson Nebula pirates. For 3 years, they had been held in check by human patrol squadrons that seemed to be everywhere at once. The pirates had learned to avoid human-protected systems because the defense responses were swift and decisive. But human tactics had never relied on superior firepower. Instead, they used speed, coordination, and unpredictability. A single human frigate could protect 3 systems by moving quickly between them and responding to threats before they developed into major problems. The Corvin approach was different. They established strong defensive positions and waited for enemies to attack. Their massive battleships could destroy any pirate vessel in direct combat. But pirates rarely engaged in direct combat. They preferred to hit undefended targets and escape before the defenders could respond. Within days of the human withdrawal, pirate attacks increased dramatically. The Corvin fleets were too slow. To intercept the raiders, who would strike at mining operations, cargo convoys, and civilian settlements before disappearing into the vast emptiness of space. "Sir, we have lost contact with cargo convoy Alpha 7, reported Corvin Communications Officer Vorth. "Send a battleship to investigate," Admiral Vextar ordered. "Sir, by the time we reach their last known position, the pirates will be long gone." The humans used to deploy rapid response squadrons to intercept threats before they could escape. "The humans were reckless and unprofessional," Vextar declared. "We will do this properly," but properly was not working. The pirates were adapting to Corvin tactics much faster than the Corvins were adapting to the new threat environment. Trade convoys began demanding additional protection, which stretched the defensive fleets even thinner. Back on Nexus Station, Chief Mediator Minho was receiving increasingly urgent reports from across the galaxy. Infrastructure failures, research shutdowns, mining problems, and security breaches were becoming daily occurrences. "Perhaps we underestimated the extent of human involvement in galactic operations," suggested Delegate Yuna during an emergency session. "Impossible," Admiral Vexitar insisted, though his confidence seemed shaken. "They were junior partners at best. We are simply experiencing temporary adjustment difficulties." But Minho could see the truth in the reports flooding his office. The humans had not been junior partners. They had been the foundation that held everything together. Their technology had seemed simple because it worked so well. Their methods had seemed basic because they made complex tasks look easy. The galaxy was beginning to understand what Hyasung had meant when she said they would soon realize what they had lost. The humans had not just participated in galactic civilization, they had quietly become essential to its functioning, and now they were gone. Jayamin had been flying cargo routes for 8 years, but he had never seen anything like this. His small freighter, the Lucky Star, was approaching the border between human and non-human space, and the difference was shocking. Behind him, the Corvin systems were in chaos. Disabled ships drifted near dead space stations. Emergency beacons flashed distress signals from mining platforms that had lost power. Trade convoys huddled together like frightened animals, waiting for military escorts that never came. Ahead of him, human space looked completely normal. Ships moved in orderly patterns along well-maintained routes. Space stations hummed with activity. The navigation beacons broadcast clear, strong signals that made travel safe and efficient. "This is Border Control Station 7, came a familiar voice over the communication system. "Welcome home, Lucky Star. Please proceed to Docking Bay 12 for standard customs inspection." Jamin smiled at hearing Korean spoken by the control officer. After 3 months in alien space, listening to translated conversations and mechanical voices, hearing his own language felt wonderful. The docking process was smooth and quick. Within an hour, Jamin was walking through the corridors of Terra Nova Colony, one of humanity's newest settlements. The colony had been built in the past 5 years, and it showed humanity's latest achievements in architecture and engineering. The buildings were elegant and efficient, using advanced materials that seemed to glow with their own soft light. The Diepo Air recycling systems were so good that the atmosphere felt cleaner than on most natural worlds. Everything worked perfectly, from the transport systems to the communication networks. "Captain Jamin!" called a familiar voice. He turned to see Borum approaching with a warm smile. She had been appointed Director of Human Colonial Affairs 6 months ago, and she looked confident and relaxed despite the crisis affecting the galaxy. "Director Borum," Jamin replied with a respectful bow. "I bring news from the other systems. The situation is getting worse every day." "We know," Borum said as they walked together through the colony's main plaza. "We monitor all the emergency broadcasts and intelligence reports. The Galactic Council is struggling to maintain basic services." They entered a comfortable office overlooking the colony's central park. Through the large windows, Yemin could see families enjoying the peaceful gardens, children playing in areas designed for perfect safety, and workers moving efficiently between buildings that represented the best of human engineering. "I don't understand," Jamin said. "Why aren't we helping them? People are suffering." Borum poured tea for both of them, using cups made from a ceramic material that Jamin had never seen before. It felt warm to the touch, but never became too hot to hold. "Tell me, Captain," Borum said quietly. "What did you see during your time? In alien space?" Jamin thought carefully before answering. "I saw systems failing everywhere. Trade routes that used to be safe are now dangerous. Mining operations are producing half their normal output. Even basic services like water and power are having problems." "And how did the other species treat you?" "Like I was an inferior being," Jamin admitted. "The Corvins especially. They acted like humans were primitive creatures who had gotten lucky with technology. Even when their systems were failing, they insisted they didn't need our help." Borum nodded sadly. "For 20 years, we shared our knowledge freely with the galaxy. We helped them improve their technology, solve their problems, and protect their systems. In return, they treated us like junior partners who should be grateful for the privilege of serving them." She activated a holographic display that showed the current state of the galaxy. Red warning symbols marked dozens of systems experiencing critical problems. Yellow indicators showed regions with reduced functionality. Only the green zone of human space appeared stable and prosperous. "The truth is, Captain, we never needed them as much as they needed us. While we were working with the Galactic Council, our researchers were developing new technologies that we kept to ourselves. We shared our good enough solutions with the galaxy, but we saved the best innovations for humanity." Jamin stared at the display in amazement. The human colonies were not just surviving without the galactic economy, they were thriving. New settlements were being established, trade between human worlds was increasing, and technological development was accelerating. "Look at this colony," Borum continued. "We built Terra Nova in 5 years using techniques that would take other species 50 years to develop. Our atmospheric processors work 3 times faster than the models we shared with the Corvins. Our defense systems are so advanced that no pirate force in the galaxy could threaten us." She showed him recordings from human shipyards where new vessels were being constructed using manufacturing techniques that seemed almost magical. The ships were sleek, efficient, and clearly more advanced than anything flying in non-human space. "But why didn't we share these advances?" Jamin asked. "We tried," Borum replied. "Every time we proposed new ideas or better methods, the other species dismissed them as too risky or too complicated. They preferred their traditional approaches and treated our suggestions as the wild ideas of inexperienced youngsters." The holographic display shifted to show military exercises in human space. Jamin watched human fleets performing maneuvers that were incredibly complex and precise. The ships moved like they were dancing, coordinating their actions with perfect timing. "Meanwhile, we learned everything we could from them," Borum continued. "We studied their technologies, analyzed their methods, and improved on their designs. The quantum extractors we maintained for the Corvins, we developed versions that are twice as efficient. The trade route calculations that seemed so difficult, We created computer systems that can handle them automatically. In another office across the colony, Sunwoo was meeting with a group of former military advisors who had returned from various alien systems. As the former coordinator for human involvement in galactic defense, he had a unique perspective on the current crisis. The Corvan military doctrine is fundamentally flawed, he explained to his colleagues. They rely on overwhelming firepower and strong defensive positions. It works well against enemies who fight the same way, but it's useless against asymmetric warfare. The other advisors nodded in agreement. They had spent years working with alien military forces, sharing tactical knowledge and strategic insights. But they had also been learning, studying every aspect of alien military capabilities and weaknesses. When we worked with them, we were essentially running their operations for them, continued Sunwoo. We made their rigid systems flexible, their slow responses faster, their predictable tactics more creative. Without us, they've reverted to their natural patterns, and those patterns make them vulnerable, added another advisor. Exactly. The pirates and raiders have figured this out. They're using hit-and-run tactics that the alien militaries cannot counter effectively. What looks like increased pirate activity is actually the same level of threat that existed before. The aliens just lost the ability to deal with it. Back in Boram's office, Jamin was beginning to understand the full scope of what had happened. So we weren't dependent on the galactic economy at all, he said slowly. Not only were we not dependent, Boram replied, we were actually carrying the entire system. Our logistics networks kept trade moving. Our technical expertise kept their equipment functioning. Our military advisors kept their forces effective. Our innovations solved problems they couldn't handle themselves. And now they're learning what the galaxy looks like without humanity holding it together. Boram smiled, but there was sadness in her expression. We didn't want it to come to this, Captain. We would have preferred to work together as true equals. But they needed to understand our actual value before that could happen. Outside the office windows, the lights of Terra Nova Colony glowed, softly in the evening darkness. The colony represented everything humanity had achieved, not just technological advancement, but the wisdom to use that technology well. It was a glimpse of what the galaxy could become if all species worked, together with mutual respect. But first, the rest of the galaxy would have to learn what they had lost when they let humanity walk away. 6 months had passed since humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Council, and the galaxy was burning. Not literally, but the collapse of civilization was spreading like wildfire across the known systems. Chief Mediator Minho stood alone in his private chambers aboard neutral space station Alpha 7, staring out at the stars. The space station had been built specifically for diplomatic meetings between hostile species, designed to be completely neutral territory where no one held advantage. Today, it would host the most important negotiation in galactic history. The meeting had been arranged through careful, indirect channels. No formal diplomatic contact was possible. Humanity still refused all official communications from the Galactic Council. Instead, old friends and former colleagues had reached out through personal networks, trading favors and calling in debts to arrange this single conversation. Minho reviewed the reports one final time, though he had memorized every terrible detail. The Helix trade routes remained completely unusable, cutting galactic commerce by half. 17 agricultural worlds faced famine as their irrigation systems continued to fail. The Outer Rim had become a lawless frontier where pirates operated. With complete freedom, the Corvan Empire, once the most powerful military force in the galaxy, had lost 3 more fortress worlds to coordinated raider attacks. Their massive battle fleets were impressive but useless against enemies who refused to fight conventional battles. But the most devastating loss was hope itself. Species that had cooperated for decades were now blaming each other for the crisis. The Delian Federation accused the Corvans of driving humanity away with their arrogance. The Mining Guild claimed the agricultural worlds had been too dependent on human help. Old rivalries and ancient grudges were surfacing as the bonds of galactic civilization weakened. Some systems had already withdrawn from the Galactic Council entirely, choosing to face the crisis alone rather than continue participating in the endless blame and arguments. Others were forming smaller regional alliances, abandoning the dream of galaxy-wide cooperation. The sound of approaching footsteps interrupted Minho's thoughts. The door opened to reveal Ambassador Jiwan, looking exactly as calm and composed as he had 6 months ago when he walked out of the council chambers. "Chief Mediator Minho," Jiwan said with a respectful bow. "Thank you for arranging this meeting." "Ambassador Jiwan," Minho replied, returning the bow. "Though I believe your title has changed." "First Speaker of the Human Commonwealth," Jiwan confirmed. The position was created to handle external relations now that humanity has consolidated its government structure. They sat across from each other at a simple table made of genuine earth wood, a subtle reminder of humanity's origins and journey to the stars. Jiwan appeared relaxed and confident, showing no signs of stress despite the galactic crisis his people had helped create. "I assume you know why I requested this meeting," Minho began carefully. "The galaxy is falling apart," Jiwan replied simply. "Systems are failing, trade has collapsed, and security has broken down. You want humanity to return and fix the problems." "Can you blame us for asking? People are suffering." "No, I cannot blame you," Jiwan said sadly. "But the question is not whether people are suffering. The question is why they are suffering." Before Minho could respond, the door opened again. A woman entered whom Minho did not recognize, tall, confident, with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. "Chief Mediator Minho, may I present Director Hyejin, our new head of diplomatic relations," Jiwan said. Hyejin bowed politely and took a seat beside Jiwan. "Chief Mediator, we appreciate your efforts to arrange this meeting. We know it was not easy given the current political situation. We are prepared to discuss humanity's return to the Galactic Council," Minho said hopefully. "We can negotiate new terms, address your concerns, find compromises that work for everyone." "I'm afraid you misunderstand our position," Hyejin replied, gently. "We are not here to negotiate humanity's return to the old system. We are here to discuss the terms under which we might participate in a new system." The words hit Minho like a physical blow. "A new system!" The old Galactic Council was based on the assumption that all species were roughly equal partners, Jiwan explained. Decisions were made by committee, with each species having similar influence regardless of their actual contributions to galactic civilization. "That was the foundation of our democracy," Minho protested. "It was the foundation of inefficiency and inequality," Hyejin corrected. "For 20 years, humanity provided the expertise, innovation, and practical solutions that kept the galaxy functioning. In return, we were treated as junior partners whose opinions were interesting, but not important." She activated a portable holographic display that showed the current state of galactic civilization. The images were even worse than Minho's reports had indicated. Entire sectors were dark, systems had gone silent, and refugee ships were fleeing failed colonies. "This crisis was not caused by humanity's withdrawal," Hyejin continued. "It was caused by the galaxy's failure to develop the skills and knowledge needed for independent survival. For 2 decades, other species chose to rely on human expertise rather than learning to solve problems themselves." "But surely we can return to cooperation," Minho pleaded. "We can share responsibilities more fairly, give humanity greater voice in decisions." "We tried that approach," Jiwan reminded him. "Every time we proposed new methods or suggested improvements, they were dismissed as too radical or too risky. The other species preferred their traditional ways and treated our innovations as the wild ideas of inexperienced youngsters." At that moment, another figure entered the room. Minho recognized her immediately as Yunji, though her appearance had changed dramatically. The former human military liaison now wore the uniform of a Commonwealth admiral, with insignia that suggested very high rank. Admiral Yunji will be coordinating military affairs if we reach an agreement, Jiwon explained. Yunji sat down and immediately activated her own holographic display. It showed detailed intelligence reports from across the galaxy, pirate movements, system defenses, trade security, military capabilities. The breakdown of galactic security was predictable and preventable, she said in a calm, professional tone. Human military advisors had been managing threat assessment and response coordination for most systems. Without that coordination, defensive forces reverted to their natural patterns, which are inadequate for modern asymmetric warfare. The Iron Fang pirates you're having so much trouble with? She continued. We tracked their activities for 3 years. Their tactics, supply lines, and leadership structure are completely mapped. We could eliminate them in 2 weeks if we chose to do so. Then why don't you? Minho asked desperately. Because we are not responsible for galactic security anymore, Yunji replied simply. That responsibility belongs to the Galactic Council and its member species. The conversation continued for hours, with humanity laying out their position with calm clarity. They were not interested in returning to their old role as helpful junior partners. If the galaxy wanted human participation, it would be as equal leaders with authority to match their contributions. What exactly are you proposing? Minho finally asked. A reformed Galactic Council, Hygiene explained. Decision-making authority would be based on actual contributions to galactic civilization, economic, technological, military, and administrative. Species that provide essential services would have greater influence over how those services are used. That would make humanity the dominant power in the galaxy, Minho realized. It would make humanity equal to our actual importance, Jiwon corrected. For 20 years we carried the galaxy while pretending to be junior partners. That pretense has ended. The negotiation stretched into the night, with humanity presenting their terms with inflexible politeness. They would return to active participation in galactic affairs, but only under conditions that acknowledged their true role in maintaining civilization. Some species would find the new arrangement difficult to accept. The Corvan Empire, in particular, would struggle with the loss of their assumed superiority. But as reports of new disasters arrived throughout the night, another agricultural world facing complete crop failure, mining operations shutting down due to equipment failures, pirate attacks reaching even the core worlds, the alternatives became clear. The galaxy could accept humanity as equal partners in a reformed system, or it could continue to collapse under the weight of problems it could not solve alone, as Dawn broke over the neutral space station. An agreement was finally reached. Humanity would return to galactic affairs, but not as the helpful assistants they had been before. They would take their place as the acknowledged masters of practical civilization, with the authority and respect their contributions deserved. There is one final condition, Jiwon said as they prepared to sign the accords. This agreement goes into effect immediately. Every day of delay means more suffering for innocent people. Within hours, human ships were moving towards systems in crisis. Human engineers were being deployed to repair failing infrastructure. Human military advisors were coordinating responses to pirate threats. But this time, they came not as subordinates eager to help, but as leaders taking charge of situations that others had proven unable to handle.